Welcome everyone to today's focus for Sunday, October the 23rd, 2022. It is currently 3:55 p.m. Central Time. Well, good Sunday afternoon to everyone. I hope you had a great morning at church. If you don't attend church or didn't go to church, well, maybe I can provide you something of spiritual sustenance, something of spiritual significance this afternoon as I try to give you today's focus. This new podcast series is designed to give you something spiritually to focus on, for you to set your attention on. With all of the distractions around you, so much available to you, it's good to hand you one thing and say, hey, today, just today. This is today's focus. Focus in on this. Meditate on this. Think about this. Think deeply about it. Don't just glance at it. Don't just consider it for 3 minutes, but it's to get you to consider it throughout an entire day. That's why we call it today's focus. The goal is to get you to spend an entire day focusing on one concept. But now this is a new podcast series, so we're still going through a little bit of growing pains, right? I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to get the intro to work the way I want to, because typically I just have a pre-recorded intro, but here the intro is being done live. So making sure I get that down, new music, have to control the volume, all the different things. And still trying, because if you've ever listened to podcasts from the beginning, you'll watch it develop, evolve over time, and it will kind of take shape. Sometimes you don't really know the identity of a podcast until maybe 3 months, 6 months, maybe even takes a year to kind of really figure out what's the real desire here? What's the real goal here? What's the real vision here? So I just ask for your patience, but I have to clarify something. All right? Because someone left a comment, and I think I understand what they're trying to say, but at the same time, I think they may be missing the point here. All right? Now, as you know, if you listen to the Theology Central podcast, and this podcast series is really a part of that podcast, but we're making it a separate one as well, and there's a reason why. But let me explain. If you listen to the Theology Central podcast, you understand that I go in depth, hours. I mean, sometimes a program will be an hour and a half, 2 hours. We cover things, the Bible study exercise podcast series. Again, a part of the Theology Central podcast. But consider how in-depth we go. But all of that requires like an hour-long podcast episode. And I'm going to obviously continue to do that. And the existence of the Today's Focus podcast series in no way, shape, or form is going to take away from that. But here's the reality, right? Not everyone has a chance to listen every day to an hour-long episode or 2 hours or 3 hours or all the hours I do broadcasting. Some people only have a little bit of time. But this is important, all right? And this is important for every individual Christian to understand, because it's important for your own spiritual growth. One of the things that I truly believe in is the concept of Christians being engaged in actual study on their own. That's why I do the Bible study exercise the way I do so, trying to get you to actually study, not just listen to me, but actually study. And it's also very important that you as an individual Christian, spend time meditating on God's word and on spiritual things, that you yourself, you don't just listen to someone else share what they have gained from hours of meditating, but no, you need to have something to meditate on. So think of it this way. The Today's Focus podcast is trying to give you that one thing so that you can spend hours meditating on it, so that you can pursue the deeper things, the meat. I'm giving you the direction. I'm trying to say, here's what to work on. Now go work on it. Now, I want to hear your thoughts and your feedback, because you never know then when that today's focus shows up in another podcast episode for Theology Central, and that we do go deeper in a different way. But it's really designed to get you to pursue it, right? Think of it this way. It's like some people, spiritually speaking, they want to go on a hunting trip, and this is what they want to do on the hunting trip. I'll stay right here at camp. You go get the food, you find the animal, shoot the animal, bring the animal back, you clean, dress the animal, cook the animal, and then put it on my plate, and then you put it in my mouth, right? I'm just going to sit here. You do everything, and then you come feed me, right? Well, this is more designed saying, hey, right out there, that's where you're going to find your spiritual food. Now you go get it. You go work on it. You go think about it. You go discover it. But I'm doing a little bit. And even if you look at the today's focus episodes that we've done so far, I mean, come on. I mean, we've worked on a Greek word, trying to figure out exactly why that Greek word translated spoil and the King James or capture and other translations. That Greek word in this interlinear does not match up. We found the correct Greek word. We understood it. We've been working on each. In Colossians 2:8, we've been working by literally every phrase. But instead of just one long, hour-long or 2 hours or 3 hours of teaching, it's just been broken down into individual segments so that you can spend that entire day thinking about that one phrase or that one concept in Colossians 2:8. So I think some people feel like, no, I would rather you just do the long teaching. Well, I do that. But I think sometimes not everyone has the ability to listen to everything. I want to say, hey, if you don't have the time today to listen to the hours and hours of broadcasting I'm doing, here's a podcast series. Here's an episode that will give you something to think about. Sometimes maybe in the morning, you don't have time to go listen to a full hour. You can listen to 15 minutes or around 15 minutes and be given something to think about. So that's really the goal here for the Today's Focus podcast series is I'm trying to say, here you go. Now there, you go hunt, you go pursue it, you go chase it. And then but the goal is to spark conversation. Well, I meditated on that today, and here's a thought. And then I can be like, okay, well, you know what? I did the Today's Focus broadcast at about 9:30 in the morning. Now I got all of these thoughts that people have sent me. Maybe at 8 o'clock at night, I'll come back and we'll do a podcast series for Theology Central that's based off Today's Focus, but we'll add to it. Or maybe I'll just do another Today's Focus. Who knows? But the goal is to try to make them short. Now, obviously, this episode, I'm already at 8 minutes, so I'm going to hurt myself here. So we're not going to be able to go too in depth right now. But once again, I'm going to give you something to think about, something to consider. So I just want to make sure people understand what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you, look, you've got a million things available to you every day, and you can bounce around and I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to listen to this, I'm going to listen to this. And that can be great. But sometimes we think about 50 things, but not very deeply. I want to give you one thing that you can think deeply about. So I hope that makes sense. I really do. And I'm sorry, I had to mute the mic because I had to sneeze, and I did not want to do that on the air. Okay. So that's the goal. I hope everyone understands. It's always interesting when you start kind of a new podcast series, the perception that people have. Like, why are you doing? Like, everyone has a different perception. And so I want to make sure everyone sees what I'm trying to do here. But are you ready? Sunday afternoon. You've probably already heard sermons, Sunday school lessons, Bible studies, probably got a million things to think about, but I want to give you one more, right? And I just want to continue our ongoing meditation, our ongoing thinking about Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Let me read it. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Beware. We need to be on the lookout as believers. Remember, Paul's writing to the church at Colossae. He's trying to tell believers, be on the lookout. Beware. We have to be paying attention. We need to be sober. We need to be vigilant. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy. There's going to be men out there. There's going to be people. There's going to be teachers. There's going to be people even inside the church who can spoil you, capture you, rob you, take from you. And they're going to do this, and they're going to rob you, take from you, capture you, spiritually speaking, through, look at the way it's written, through philosophy and vain deceit. Now, what we discovered, if you look at the way this is kind of written, what it's really saying is don't let anyone spoil you through empty, deceitful philosophy. It's not just philosophy in general. It's a philosophy that is vain, empty, and deceitful. It leads you away. It leads you astray from Christ and his word and biblical truth. It's a philosophical way of thinking that leads you away from the Bible, from godly thinking. All right. And this is a philosophy, I think, that Christians, now some may say it's a philosophy from outside the church, maybe, but I think it's also philosophies that show up within the church. And I've given you some assignments to work on. I've given you all kinds of things to do to really add to this so that there is spiritual meat to be gained. All right. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men. So this is a philosophy that comes from the tradition of men. It's not a philosophy. It's not a philosophy that would come from God or godly wisdom or a biblical perspective. It's an empty, vain philosophy after the tradition of men. It comes from the minds and the traditions of human beings. So we talked about that tradition of men. And then next, this is the one I want you to think about today. After the rudiments of the world. After the rudiments of the world. The rudiments of the world. The rudiments of the world. Like, that's an interesting phrase. If we look up in the Blue Letter Bible app, go to Colossians 2:8, go to the interlinear, and we go down to the word rudiments. The rudiments. All right? The rudiments. It's this. Are you ready? Here we go. Here's the Greek word.
Strong's G 4747. Stoichaion. Stoichaion.
Stoichaion. Stoichaion. All right? Stoichaion. Now, stoichaion is used 7 times. Element, rudiment, or principle. 4 times element, 2 times rudiment, 1 time principle. Stoichaion. Its Strong's definition is, if I can see here, something orderly in arrangement, a serial, fundamental, proposition, element, principle, rudiment. All right? It's if you look at Thayer's Greek lexicon, it's any first thing from which the others belonging to some series or composite whole takes their rise, an element first principle. So the idea is that an elementary first principle is really the way to understand this. If you look at this, you could. In fact, the King James says rudiment. Colossians 2:8, the King James says rudiments of the world. Rudiments of the world. You could think of it, the elementary principles of the world. This is a philosophy that is vain and deceitful. It's based off the traditions of men, but it's based off the elementary principles of the world. Here's some just quotes about it for you to think on, all right? It describes something orderly in arrangement. For example, one of a row, hence a component or element. Most of its uses, it denotes an elementary or fundamental principle and a subject or discipline. Okay? So that kind of gives you an idea. It basically means one of a row or series. It has several meanings attached to it. The elementary sounds or letters like the ABCs, the basic elements of the universe, or the basic elements of knowledge, the ABCs of some system. All right? And I'll just read here from Barclay. It writes this, literally things which are set on in a row. For instance, the word for a file of soldiers, but one of the commonest meanings is the letters of the alphabet. no doubt because they form a series which can be set out in a row. The Greek word can mean the letters of the alphabet. It can also very commonly mean elementary instruction in any subject. We will speak of learning the ABC of a subject when we mean taking the first steps in it. It is possible the meaning here has a second meaning. It means the elemental spirits of the world, and especially the spirits of the stars and planets. That's interesting. It talks about possibly referencing astrology. That, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think it's the idea of that this is a philosophy based on elementary concepts, elementary principles of this world. They're very worldly concepts, very worldly ideas. They're not spiritual. They are basic. This philosophy that had possibly come into the church of Colossae, but it doesn't. We don't really know for sure what that philosophy was. That's one of the homework assignments I gave everyone to work on. I gave everyone things to dig deeper if they want to, but it's the idea that this is I don't know about the astrology idea. I don't know. Barclay goes a long ways describing the astrology connection. I'm a little not convinced. Other translations state it this way. Be careful that no one take you captive through philosophy and empty deceit based on human tradition, based on the elements of the world. Based on the elements of the world. So here's a philosophy that is vain and deceitful. It's based off the traditions of man, but it really contains the elementary principles of a world, or worldly elementary principles. Worldly elemental principles or elementary principles. Now, what's interesting is, like many of the commentaries, don't go into any more way of thinking. So I'm just going to throw out a thesis here, just going to throw out an idea, just kind of a hypothesis here. Not saying this is dogmatic, but I want you to just think about this, all right? So I know we're a little over time. Just stay with me, all right? So as a believer, you need to be on the lookout for vain, empty philosophies that can capture you, rob you, plunder you spiritually so that it has a detrimental impact on your spiritual life. Here's a way of thinking, a way of wisdom, a way of perceiving reality and existence and truth, right? And that it's contrary to the Word of God. And the reason it's vain and deceitful is because it's based off human tradition. It comes from man. It's man's way of thinking versus God's way of thinking. It's the cultural, and listen, this is just not from the culture perspective, inside the church. Remember, Jesus' biggest issue that he kept dealing with was religious leaders who kept elevating the traditions of men over the Word of God. So even within the church, you can get vain, deceitful philosophy that are based after the traditions of men. The only difference in the church, we claim that it's spiritual and we claim that it's godly. But this philosophy is after the rudiments of the world. It's after the elementary principles of the world. It's after elementary worldly principles. The ABCs, the 1, 2, 3. Now, I don't know if this will be accurate, but I at least want us to consider it. What would you think are the elementary principles of worldly thinking? I don't know if that's a correct question to ask in regards to this verse, because it seems to be some disagreement on exactly what he's referring to as the elementary principles, right? This translation says the element, but it says based on the elements of the world. So that's what's got me thinking. The elements of the world. Well, this is a philosophy based off the elements of the world. So if you're to look at the world, what are the key, basic elements of worldly thinking? Like if you were to take the basic elements of Christian thinking, and the basic elements of worldly thinking, and you were to make a chart, like take a piece of paper, draw a line from the top of the page to the bottom of the page, right in the middle, dividing it into two halves. On one side, write down the basic elementary elements of biblical thinking. And on the other side, write the basic elements of worldly thinking. I would love to see what you come up with. I would love to see what you come up with. Now I'm going to stop right there. I still want to get these to 15 minutes. But I felt like I had to take a little bit of time to kind of explain what we're doing. Once we get past some of the growing pains here in this podcast series, I think we can get it down to that 15 minutes. I'll just have to jump right into it and won't have time for discussing other things. But every once in a while, I think it's okay. So on this Sunday afternoon, as you get ready to launch into a new week, or really today is the beginning of the week, but as you enter a new week, I want you to beware of empty, deceitful philosophy after the traditions of men and based off the elementary principles of the world, elementary worldly principles. And I want you to try to think about what are the basic elementary levels of Christian thinking, elementary points of Christian biblical thinking, and what you would think is the elementary basic principles of worldly thinking. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Think about this. Remember, the goal is to get you to think. Today's focus, elementary worldly principles, elementary principles of the world. I would love to get your thoughts on it. Look up some commentaries. See what they have to say. All right, I'll stop there. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Today's Focus podcast series. Podcast series is designed to get you to focus on one thing for an entire day so that you may grow in your spiritual life. I hope that over the next few weeks and months, we can turn this into a podcast series that becomes a part of your every single day, and it helps you grow in a way that is meaningful and helpful. That is my prayer, and hopefully we can accomplish that. Thank you. That is your today's focus for this Sunday, October the 23rd, 2022.